Welcome back, everybody. Matt the Bat here. So, on today's Christmas special, we're talking about Miracle on 34th Street, the remake, the 1994 remake, starring Elizabeth Perkins, Dylan McDermott, Richard Attenborough, and Mara Wilson. This was a classic in the 90s. I remember watching this movie around Christmas time. Once we went over to my neighbor's house and it was on TV, or they were watching it. And then on Christmas Day when we went to my grandmother's house down in Dunwoody in her condo, we put it on there, all in our little Christmas outfits. My sister actually wore a very similar Christmas outfit that you see Mara Wilson wear near the end of the movie. So, this movie is I've always loved this movie, watching it, I don't know. Funny enough, this was the same year that we also got the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. So imagine that, we got two Christmas movies that year, that today, and now today you can almost have an argument of who was the best Santa Claus, Tim Allen or Richard Attenborough. I tend to lean on Richard Attenborough because he obviously looked a lot more like Santa Claus, as a believable Santa Claus. If I saw Richard Attenborough's Santa Claus in the mall, no matter how old I was, I would say, nope, that is the real Santa. Because he always looked like the real Santa. I like Tim Allen as Santa Claus, but we obviously know Tim Allen had to put the beard on and everything, the fat suit, Richard Attenborough looked like Santa Claus. Sadly, he passed away back in 2014. But imagine that you become, the year prior to that, you're John Hammond in Jurassic Park. Then the next year, you're Santa Claus. Not a bad way. Two very iconic characters. But let's get into it. This movie is well made. You know, you can always know a great script. The rule in filmmaking is, if for a short film, you gotta get the audience set up, character set up, plot set up in the first page or two of a short film. Now, with a feature film, they normally say by the first 10 to 15 pages, you need to have the audience on board. You need to have the characters laid out. You need to have the conflict started. You need to have maybe the villain already introduced. You need to have the finer point. You need the plot points. You need the characters already established. You need the underlining problems. You know, all the little things in that first 15 minutes to then let the rest of the film play out. And let me tell you that this movie is produced by John Hughes. John Hughes was known back in the 80s and 90s for like The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and of course Home Alone. And you definitely have the John Hughes feel. Even though he did not direct this movie, you definitely have the script motivations and sensibilities of his other films. The one thing I will say about this movie, the first 15 minutes sets up everything you are going to see throughout the entire film. It establishes the characters. Obviously Chris Kringle, Elizabeth Perkins, Dylan McDermott, Mara Wilson, and the other guy who gets fired as Santa. And then the opposing company and their little people over there. They set that up in the first 10 minutes. In the first 10 minutes you get the scene, the opening scene of the movie also says it all. Such a minor scene that has a payoff later. When Chris Kringle is walking down the sidewalk, he gets to the crosswalk, and the little boy is going, "Ask him, Grandpa, ask him. Ask him, Grandpa, ask him." And of course the old man says, or the grandpa says, "I'm sorry, my grandson thinks you're Santa Claus." And of course Chris Kringle goes down and whispers to the boy, "I am." And, the little boy, "Gee, I wish I got his autograph." And the judge just kind of laughs and like, "You think you're Santa Claus, haha." Little do we know that later on that's going to play a major role in the courtroom scene when that old grandpa is actually the judge in this court proceeding. So that was number one, a smart little detail already sprinkled in at the very beginning. And once again, having a little kid believing this guy's Santa Claus just when he sees him. Then we get into the parade, and the one Santa Claus gets fired. Now he has a grudge against this new Santa Claus, Chris Kringle. Okay, so we set that up. That's going to have a payoff. Then we get into Elizabeth Perkins and her going home, seeing the video of her daughter. Also, we realize right away with the scene with Mara Wilson and Dylan McDermott that Mara Wilson's character, even for like an 8 or 9-year-old, is a very, very, very smart girl, way beyond her years in her dialogue. And even like Dylan McDermott even made the joke, "Have you seen my daughter?" "Yes. 7 years old, talks like she's 35. That was my sister growing up." So, my sister talked like Mara Wilson does in the movie. My cousin looked like Mara Wilson at that age. So it was a very odd, and instead of going into one body with the wise adult talk girl and the lookalike girl, it was split into two different people. That was weird growing up. So we established that. We also established, obviously, these two older, Elizabeth Perkins, and also we established Mara Wilson doesn't believe in Santa Claus. So right there we know, okay, that's another thing we're going to play a part of throughout this movie. And then, of course, we got the relationship between Elizabeth Perkins, Dylan McDermott, kind of a rough, iffy, are they, aren't they, do they like each other, do they not? What is the sexual tension? Just get on with it. So all of that is laid out in the first 15 minutes of the movie. Brilliant. Also, another thing that works in this movie is the cinematography. The decision to put the light right above their head, almost like an angel-like look to them, or it also with the lighting right in their face, and everything else around them kind of dark, kind of give this 1940s cinematography feel to it. Coincidentally, the original was made in the 40s, so they were already trying to invoke a little bit of the original Miracle on 34th Street with the lighting technique, but in color, like that. And then we had the 40s feel, the red lipstick on Elizabeth Perkins, very bright, with the light really on her face. I love the cinematography in this movie. One of my favorite shots in this movie, and I hope I can, find a photo of, is when Chris Kringle's in jail, and we have a shot of him at the window, and it's like this soft lighting, and he's in all white, and it's just first is a still shot of him just sitting there, beautiful shot, then they dolly out, and it's just one of the best shots in this thing. It looks like a painting, it looks so beautiful, and then there's a shot where one of the janitors or guards is looking through the little hole, the little door window thing, I don't know what you want to call it, and you just see it, and the framing of that is beautiful to look at too. And then of course you get the performances. Elizabeth Perkins was on her A game in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, between this movie, Flintstones, the Tom Hanks movie, Big. Like I said, she was all over the place. You had Mara Wilson everywhere, from Matilda, Miss Doubtfire, and even in Matilda, she was very wise beyond her years. That's why it always made me laugh when I was in college and I was writing my senior film, the script for my senior film, and there was a student in my class who was like, 9-year-old boys don't talk like that. I go, excuse me? 9-year-olds don't talk like that. He sounds like a 35 or 40-year-old. And I said, well, if you were someone who's experienced more stuff in life than most people and were around adults most of their life than kids at your age, you would talk more like an adult than a kid. And obviously my senior film was a little bit of me spending so much of my time in the hospital throughout my life. So it's kind of like, yes, I am way beyond you. Sorry. I'm smarter than you. I can talk better than you. Sorry if you don't like that. So, and it was always funny to me because I'm like, have you ever seen Matilda? Have you ever seen Miracle on 34th Street? Mara Wilson talks like a 35-year-old in those movies, but she's like 7 years old. But no one seemed to give her any shit about it. I mean, so it's like, and actually my professor kind of stuck up for me and like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure if someone in that environment who's used to being more around adults than kids his own age is going to talk more like an adult. So, I win. But anyway, I always thought that was funny when I got little boys don't talk like that at that age. Like, I also thought my sister wouldn't talk like she did at her age, but we won't say the stuff that she said when she was 7 years old to a boy in the neighborhood. I mean, you would never hear that from a 7-year-old. You wouldn't even hear that from an adult. But yeah, I mean, and like the Dylan McDermott, he was like the guy he's like the Henry Cavill of the 90s. He just has that look. Otherwise, he was never Superman, actually. And then, of course, we got the late Richard Attenborough. He was Santa Claus. No doubt about it. He has the look and everything. The laugh, the twinkle in your eye, the smile. And then, of course, when he put on that suit, I mean, come on now. And also, I like the courtroom scene. I like how half this movie, the second half of this movie is all in the courtroom. I was watching this movie the other night, and at 57 minutes, the courtroom stuff started, and there was still about an hour left in the movie. So I like that nowadays you don't get courtroom dramas. Back in the 90s, it was like The Firm, A Few Good Men, this movie, Miracle on 34th Street, and I'm sure there's a few others. Well, we have lost the courtroom drama film. They don't make those anymore. I don't know why. The only thing I do not like about this movie, nothing I don't like about it, is just the relationship between Elizabeth Perkins and Dylan McDermott. I always think it's rushed. Then they have that montage where they go on the date, and and then by the end of the day, here, I'm going to propose to you. What? Even I'm like, huh? Who thought that was good writing? Here, we went on a date finally, we had a good time, I'm going to propose to you. Yes, they've been together as friends, as neighbors, for a long time. He watches her kid, la-di-da-di-da, when she's at work. But I never felt like that was warranted. Like, you don't propose after one date. If people did that, they would be cuckoo. Anyway, so that was the only part of the movie that I never really liked. I wish they fleshed that out more in the movie. Or just cut out the part where he proposes. Cut that out. Other than that, I like this movie. It's a great paced movie. Like I said, Richard Attenborough is a great Santa Claus. Mara Wilson was at the top of her game. I don't know what happened to her. She quit acting after a while. But like I said, back in the 90s, if you said who is the best young female actress, child actress, Mara Wilson was it. Before Dakota Fanning, there was Mara Wilson. So, anyway, Matt the Man here. Have you watched Miracle on the 34th Street? What do you think about this movie? Do you like it?